Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of What's Up With That, Alex? My name is Simon Kent. I'm a co-founder of Connect Family Law, and sitting right beside me today is...
Alex Boland, a barrister and solicitor.
Nice.
and
nice.
One of the lawyers here at the Kelowna office.
Yes, and here we in fact are here at the Kelowna office today.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm primarily here to ask Alex some really hard questions.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is, as most of you viewers may know, I have gone through a separation and divorce many years ago now, but it was a difficult time and a lot of questions flowed from my experience going through that. And I thought, hey, maybe this makes sense to ask some of these questions of Alex and to maybe help others who are struggling and have questions. So Alex, this is our 7th episode, so this means it's one of maybe 7th question I've got for you. Are you ready for this?
Well, I'll see what the question is, and then I'll decide.
Okay, all right. The question today has to do with a friend of mine who has gone through a divorce and has got 2 kids, 8 and 10 years old. She was telling me the other day that when not all the time, but often the kids do not want to go to their father's house. There's a lot of crying and sometimes sort of hanging onto furniture and saying, I don't want to go to dad's. And someone has told my friend that the kids should be allowed to choose whether they go to their, in this case, the father's house. That seemed odd to me, especially kids that are that young. What's up with that? Is that correct?
It's basically not correct, I would say.
Okay.
So, end of segment. That's it.
All right.
No. So what the law says is that when the court is looking at parenting arrangements, where the kids are going to spend the night, when they're going to see dad, it's looking at really one thing: children's best interests, right? And within that category of children's best interests, one of the things the court looks at is the views of the children. Okay. So that's one way of saying that, yeah, what the kids think does matter, but it is not the end of the story. Right? What the courts tend to do is look at the maturity and particularly the age of the children when they're deciding how much weight to give their views. So, your 8-year-old doesn't want to go to dad's house. The court is going to be probably concerned because it's odd for an 8-year-old not to want to see one of their parents. And there might be something fishy going on there one way or another. But also they're not going to give the child the final say. 8-year-old doesn't want to go. 8-year-olds don't necessarily know what's good for them. As the child gets older, the court is going to give more and more weight to their views. So 16, 17, 18-year-old, the court will often say, look, I'm not going to force this child to do something they don't want to do. They're adults. They could be driving. They're not going to stay. Court will usually, but not always, but usually will not make orders about
Well,
this
of course,
person.
how could the court ever enforce something like that, right?
Well, exactly right. I mean, that leads into the question about your friend. Like, what is her role in this? Because the court may not make orders compelling her children to do anything, but the court will make orders that require her to do things. So she has to be careful to take any steps she can to make sure the parenting time is happening. The last thing she wants to have is finding that she's in contempt of court or something of that nature.
But of course, where this all leads, I guess, in my mind, is parental alienation. That would be the far end of the spectrum of a parent essentially supporting the idea that you're not going to dad's.
Right. And I mean, that's sort of what I was hinting at when I said the court might be worried there's something untoward going on there.
Yeah.
So that does lead into the next part of this, which is like, if your child is saying, I don't want to see dad, I don't want to see mom, or otherwise expressing strong views about what they would like to see happen, how do you get that evidence to a judge, right? Because what we don't want to see is kids in courts, sitting on the witness stand, being cross-examined. I mean, that's terrible. Nobody wants to see that. At least nobody that is interested in kids' well-being wants to see that.
Correct.
So we have a number of different tools to try and get the evidence of children into a court case. Probably the most common right now is something called a Hear the Child report or a Views of the Child report. Both are similar. A Hear the Child report is almost like a verbatim transcription of what a child says, and the child is making this transcription to usually a social worker or a lawyer, a specially trained individual. And this person is really asking them some questions and putting the answer down word for word. Next step up is a Views of the Child report, very similar to Hears of the Child report, but there's an assessment component. So the professional who's preparing it might offer some opinion about whether the child appeared coached, whether the child appeared to be genuinely offering their opinion, that sort of thing. There's other kinds, more intense versions of these assessments that go up to something called the Section 211 report, kind of outside what we're talking about, but that kind of report, full psychiatric assessment of everyone concerned, that would typically have a Views of the Child component as well. And then, one thing that is, I don't know if it's increasingly common, but it's not uncommon, is for a judge to have some interview with the child. The purpose of the judge doing that isn't necessarily to get evidence of what the child thinks, but more to have a sense of, is the child mature? Is the child given this some thought? Is this a genuine feeling from the child? So those are the kinds of ways that we'd like to see evidence come in that spares the sort of the unpleasantness of having a child testify in open court.
And of course, this reminds me of one of our earlier episodes where we sort of touched on this idea of the courts getting involved in people's lives and whether it's appropriate for a child to be living with their father or their mother.
Yeah.
And that's only happening because they're going through a separation and
Right.
divorce.
That's exactly right. If your 10-year-old says, well, I don't want to come home tonight, and your parents aren't separated, well, you can do what you need to do to get your kid home, and that's just not the case once you're separated.
Yeah. So is the moral of the story just don't ever get separated and divorced?
I would say never get divorced.
Okay.
That would be a good first step.
Well, actually, why don't we take a step back and say the moral of the story is choose wisely when you're partnering up.
In all things in life, choose wisely.
Okay.
There you go.
That's good. Wow, this is a gem.
Yeah.
This is wisdom that will carry people through the ages.
Right.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for episode 7 of What's Up With That, Alex. I, again, really appreciate you
pleasure.
spending the time with me.
Yeah, always a good time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And we'll see you
Adieu.
again next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.